Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. I'm here this morning to decide whether or not Michael Carrick has somewhat earned the Manchester United full-time role. Okay, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for obviously tuning in and enjoying the pieces. But just before we get into this, I actually had a little bit of research done. 81% of the people who watch the Overlap Breakdowns videos aren't subscribed. So, in the meantime, while we're chasing down 50k subscribers, it would really mean a lot if you do subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and all that good stuff. But once again, I'm absolutely buzzing in the studio. Michael Carrick's now gone 19 out of 21 available points since coming into Manchester United in the second time round. And he's now matched the record points tallies by Premier League managers within their first 9 games. Obviously, this takes into account his first stint. But he's now joint with Ange Postecoglou on 23 points after 9 games in charge, which is absolutely incredible. And I think, to be honest, I did not foresee it going this well. I was really happy with Michael Carrick and the appointment and stuff like that. But in sort of the way we've played, the bigger matches, how well we've played in the bigger matches especially, does feel like the tide is somewhat turning with the manager market, and the questions are starting to come up now whether Manchester United are almost going to be forced to give him the job. I got asked a question the other day by someone at work, which was basically like, if he does get top 3 and he does play, and we do get Champions League and all this, it's like you almost have to give him the job. Just regarding Michael Carrick and some of the struggles that Manchester United have faced against low blocks, obviously I've praised his ideas for having this somewhat positionless attacking football with a lot of off-ball runs, third-man combos, and a lot of fluidity or freedom, if you like, but I don't like using that word, when it comes to what Manchester United are doing on the ball under Carrick. And in the bigger games, it's no surprise that they look better when there are bigger spaces to be hit. And I think in the last few games, a lot of Manchester United fans have seen somewhat of a drop-off in performance, which I would 100% agree with. I think there has been some interesting things that he's tried, Michael Carrick. He's tried to use Mbeumo left wing. He's tried to move Cunha, obviously, to the striker. He's tried to obviously drop Ahmad, put Sesko up there. And I think Manchester United are still somewhat seeing problems against them lower blocks. And I think that's where you need a little bit more rigidity in your in-possession shape. But Manchester United are going to play a lot more Crystal Palaces, Fulhams, West Hams and Evertons than they are going to play Arsenal and City. And them ideas in those games, so far, Manchester United are still a little bit concerned as fans when they have the majority of the ball. I've actually got some stats here to compare Ruben Amorim against Michael Carrick in the 25-26 season. And direct speed is just the slightest bit up under Michael Carrick. Passes played into the box is slightly bit down under Carrick, but passes ending in the final third, we can see 152. That's a 20 pass jump than Ruben Amorim. Passes into the final third, again, a jump from Ruben Amorim. Passes in the opposition's half, again, a jump from Amorim to Carrick. So we're definitely getting the ball into the final third a little bit better under Michael Carrick. I would say so as well. Obviously factoring that we have had 2 of them 7 games against 10 men, of course. They were both red cards at very earlier stages in the game. So, yeah, we're in that position right now, but I really want to talk about just the finer details of Manchester United under Michael Carrick, the good and some of the bad, really. And I'm not here to bring a downer to it, but some of the halves recently have been a little bit shaken. I wanted to go into why. So, against Crystal Palace, I'm going to use this game as the main talking point, but Manchester United obviously used the 4-2-3-1. It's been a mainstay with Kobe, Mainu and Casemiro in the midfield. Now, the biggest thing that we've lost out on, I think, in the past few weeks has been Patrick Dorgu. And I think the way the squad's been built, you can't really turn your nose up at any of the summer signings at the moment because they are proving their worth. It does feel like the squad is now lacking a massive gaping hole at left wing and in midfield. And I'm going to go on to speak about some of the in-possession, out-possession issues that Manchester United have had in these lower, when they play these lower placed teams and they have to come out and play with the ball. But when Harry Maguire's got it, we've seen this shift into somewhat of a back 3 with Dalot pushing high and Mbeumo looks to tuck inside. Dalot likes to push outside. They often use these 2 in here. And it splits a little bit more like this with all the players pushing in. You get this 3-4 in the middle with this box and then 3 across the front line. Now, against Palace, what we actually saw quite a lot was, if we just take this back to the original shape and how it looked, what we actually saw was Manchester United not really playing with a left winger. Now, I have actually complimented this tactic somewhat from Michael Carrick, and that is to overload one side of the pitch completely. So we practically don't play with any width on one side. So the intention is to have these two sitting midfielders here, but then if the ball is on the right-hand side, we're looking for the other players on this side to go and look for the ball. And that often creates these moments where Cunha is completely vacated the left-hand side and he goes and stands on the right-hand side. Now, there was countless funny moments in this game where Shaw or Mazraoui have got the ball like this in the edge of the box and there's nothing on the left-hand side. I've actually got a screenshot to show you here of when we're 1-0 down at 5 minutes into the game. Luke Shaw is up on the ball, looking straight ahead down the line, and if you look at the other side of the pitch, it's completely compacted with all of Manchester United's other 9 outfield players. I personally think this is somewhat of a squad building issue. I don't think that Matheus Cunha is a natural left-sided player, especially when he plays left wing, but I would say that if we had a player like Patrick Dorgu, who's a little bit more of an aggressive fullback, who I still think will be a left-back long-term at Manchester United, I can see that complementary partnership working with Dorgu going down the outside, making them bursting runs with and without the ball. And that suits Matheus Cunha. At the moment, Luke Shaw doesn't have the legs to do that, and therefore he remains quite reserved. And Manchester United end up in these situations where the left-hand side is very vacated and there's no one really here to stretch teams, especially when a team plays like a 3-4-3, which is one of the hardest shapes in the game to break when it comes down to a 5-4-1. Now, that is a little bit of a problem in terms of the squad building, but I do want to suggest that I also think that we do need like a left back, we need a central midfielder, we need a left winger. I think there's a lot of problems on this left-hand side to do with the balance. But as I've mentioned before, pretty much all of the summer signings have been amazing. Benjamin Sesko has now got he's won 8 points for Michael Carrick with his goals. And I think it's quite extraordinary what he's doing at Manchester United. And I've got some stats to show you that under Carrick, he's obviously only started 1 game out of 6. But his minutes per goal is 42 minutes per goal. His expected goals is only 1.6 and he scored 4 goals, showing that he's just coming to life in front of goal. He's converted 36% of his shots under Carrick. He's got 11 shots in 168 minutes, which is absolutely ludicrous. And again, he's won 8 points with them goals. And I think he has been somewhat of a saviour in these games, because I think when Manchester United, even under Ruben Amorim, had no real focal point, when it comes to breaking down these low blocks, it really does look a bit itchy and scratchy. And I'm just going to show you what happens when this block falls down into this 5-4-1 and Manchester United wanted to get higher up the pitch. You often get this thing where it's flattened out into a 5, and one of our only real chance creating methods is this in-swinger. Now, against West Ham, I was really disappointed that Sesko didn't actually come on for the game earlier on in the game. Now, Everton and West Ham have conceded the most crossed goals in the Premier League when we went in to play them in 19th and 20th for that metric. Now, in this game, it felt like there was a lot of clear of an idea to work that in-swinging ball. And I was a bit disappointed that we've not seen it more often. We've obviously seen it for the Casemiro disallowed goal at West Ham, but this goal right here is exactly what we're talking about in terms of using Sesko and using the players off him. So when we're working these opportunities where there's a wide overload, having players to stand here outside the block and use Sesko's aerial presence, it makes it a really good chance creating method, especially when you've got players like Kobe, Bruno, even Dalot from a more reserved position can cross the ball. In Mbumo for the goal at West Ham, where Sesko equalised, the same principles of them in-swinging balls in. Now in the second half, Michael Carrick actually made a little bit of a tweak against Crystal Palace, and that was to get Cunha wide, high on the left touchline, and that worked a little bit better. I've actually got a quote here from Carrick where he talks about sort of the changes he made to Cunha's role going through the game and what he looked like in the first half and the second half. And he said in his own words, I think it's about getting the balance when to play inside, when to play outside, when to make the runs in behind. Cunha thinks a lot about the game. He's really good in terms of knowing when to understand certain aspects. He's conscious of where the space is and knows when to attack certain spaces. Sometimes it's wide. I thought particularly second half at times he looked dangerous going 1v1, and then he's inside the pitch a little bit more to create that moment for the penalty. Now, there is a weird trade-off with this Matheus Cunha role in terms of what he's being asked to do when he comes inside. I've got another couple of screenshots on your screen right now to talk through you the Cunha goal that he scored against Fulham, and we can see that same role where he's completely completely inside within Mbumo and the right winger, and they're congested on the right side, and they're looking to create that space, because when you've got 5 players inside the pitch like this, you can create these really nice moments where if the ball is worked here, you can fire it between the lines, and you've got a lot of bodies in there to connect with. The problem is, in the last few games, Manchester United aren't playing through the lines as brave and as confident as they were in the previous games against the bigger teams where they had all the confidence. I feel like Manchester United now are a little bit more reserved when they go to play these lesser teams like your Fulhams, your West Hams, your Evertons, your Palace, even though we won 3 out of 4 of them games. But the bravery isn't there to fire it between the lines. And I think that's mostly because they have more of the ball. Therefore, they're worried about Palace, for example, counter-attacking, West Ham counter-attacking. They don't want to lose the ball high up in the opposition's half, because obviously if you lose it there, it's a very dangerous moment for your back four. The questions are, if Carrick does keep winning in his Manchester United job, and I think the reason why I wanted to do this was before the Newcastle away game, because we have a horrible record at Newcastle, and I think if Michael Carrick keeps winning, and I think the performances are good enough, I don't understand how he doesn't force himself into the job. Now, I'm going to be honest, the manager market at the moment is very, very slim. I think the only manager being rumoured just to leave our club would be Luis Enrique. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Luis Enrique is a phenomenal manager, probably one of the best managers in the world. And I think, yes, I would absolutely love him at Manchester United, but I don't know how realistic that is. And if you look at the manager market and you look at the international managers more importantly, it is shrinking by the minute, and in them minutes where it's shrinking, Michael Carrick is winning games of football. So I don't know how long they're going to leave this situation, but I think more importantly it is a bit stagnant at times in terms of when to play through the lines. It's sometimes in the first halves, it's looked really congested in between the lines like this when everyone's sucked into the middle and we're not firing them balls through. The Everton first half, again, we had a long stretch, I think it was 14 days between Everton and the game before. So we had to build up that momentum and rhythm that Carrick keeps talking about. But I do feel like in what Carrick's doing at the moment, if you do get a left winger, if you do get a midfielder, if you do get this, that and the other, I do think you see a very, very, very good idea. And I'm really interested to see what Manchester United do long term with Michael Carrick. And there are some issues that I've noticed over the last few games, and I am going to push this back into talking about Manchester United off the ball and what they're doing off the ball. So we mentioned this in our preview when we talked about Michael Carrick coming in. And when I watched his Middlesbrough team, they were a lot more of a reserved, passive team, a lot more of a block team. They didn't really look to press extremely high in certain cases. And that has pretty much been what we've seen at Manchester United. We've seen this reserved 4-4-2, which when they look to block space is very good. So you think of the likes of the City game, the Arsenal game, games like that. We played really good in that 4-4-2, deny a lot of chances from open play. But the problem is when we're obviously playing the games like Fulham, Everton, Crystal Palace, they're teams who are more likely to bring the ball out of the back and try and build through you. Especially in the Fulham game, we noticed a lot of moments where we go 4-4-2 and the press just isn't perfect. It's not completely man-to-man. We're not at the throat. We're not forcing high turnovers in a lot of games. In the second half, we do come alive a little bit more because we're just a fresher team almost all the time. Now, in the Palace game, what I noticed is when they pushed on their front three like this and they used these narrow forwards, when they were building up in this three, we really didn't look that convincing in the press. And I think Palace got through us a lot of times using this sort of build-up. So I've got an image on your screen right now from the 8th minute. So this is after Palace has gone 1-0 up. And we can see that they've got that 3-2 in front. And Manchester United's 2 strikers are trying to curve around the press to block off that escape pass through Carrick Mitchell. Now we can see that the 4 flat midfielders between the lines have all jumped. But Mbumo and Bruno Fernandes in this case aren't really covering the greatest of spaces. And this pass basically works its way all the way through Ismail Assar, and then Palace are in behind Manchester United's midfield. He gives it to Carrick Mitchell, who's then been found through this somewhat reserved press and trying to clog off one side of the press. And now Palace have got a really, really good opportunity to cross the ball in at 1-0, 9 minutes in at Old Trafford. And this could be a very, very dangerous situation for Manchester United to concede from. I don't doubt that a lot of this is down to the midfield legs, with Kobe and Casemiro not being the most mobile in there. But I also think structurally there are issues. So think when it's come down to timing, if you can imagine what you've got on the board right now, is you've got these three really narrow forwards for Crystal Palace. Now, Diogo Dalot was getting sucked in to manage this player so they can go man-to-man like this, 3v3. And that obviously leaves this player to come down the side. Now, this is going to be a problem when we play three at the backs, and this, technically, is Mbeumo's man, so Mbeumo has got to stand there. Now, when you're going to jump out of the press, that means Mbeumo sometimes has to come from this wing-back position to jump all the way forward to this left centre-half, so then Manchester United can go man-to-man in the build-up like this. But that is extremely hard for Manchester United to do, and we've seen it a couple times. So there are things to be worked on, but I do think that Manchester United are currently they're winning games, and they're winning games in a way where they're not blowing teams away, but they're doing it in terms of like this rhythm, and they're just going about the business. Benjamin Sesko, like if you listen to Carrick when he's talking about Benjamin Sesko, he's sort of always showing off this calm response. He's got the mentality, he's calm, he's not worried, he deserves it, he understands the process of what we're trying to do. Manchester United have seen great moments when it comes to playing with the ball in these smaller spaces, breaking lines, playing off each other, these wall passes. And I do think we have seen this happen before. And I've got another example on your screen. This is at 2-1 up now. We can see that Manchester United are using that somewhat 4-2 build-up. Casemiro has dropped between the centre-halves to split it. Another role that Michael Carrick's given to the two central midfield players to drop between the lines, spread it out a little bit more so we can play forward. Casemiro here completely splits numerous amount of players, takes them out of the game, fires it into Bruno, who's playing just off Sesko. Sesko plays a nice little wall pass, and Manchester United are out down the left-hand side. Again, Cunha holding that touchline in the second half. Good tweak from Carrick, and we can see him coming inside, and it's a nice shot on his right foot on a favourable angle. Now, I do think there are moments for Manchester United where we've not been utterly convincing, but we're winning games, and I think the stuff that needs to be fixed, I think could come in time if he's given the job. I'm not going to sit here and say that he should be given the job, but I really am struggling to think if he keeps winning matches and he gets all this credit under his belt, I don't really know where Manchester United turn from here. And I think the good thing is I think a lot of the issues for me with the setup in terms of what Michael Carrick's asking the players to do, I think he's already shown the ability to tweak it here and there. I think obviously we mentioned that Cunha wasn't getting as much joy when he comes inside for Manchester United when he's playing in here. In the second half, he let Cunha stay more on the touchline, more 1v1s, had Daniel Munoz on toast a few times. And I just think in general, he's been really good adapting from game to game. The Sesko stuff, you can call it a masterclass because he's scoring goals off the bench, but if he's coming on against tired legs and he backs him to, use his physicality, use his pace and power in behind, he can come in and score goals off the bench like he has done. Then he starts him against Crystal Palace, he scores. And I'm not even forgetting, obviously, the substitutions he made in his first few games, where every one of them was spot on. The Cunha one in the Manchester derby, Cunha again in the Emirates to see out the game and obviously score the winner. It's really hard for me to sit here and say he doesn't deserve it, because he might well fully get him into himself in a conversation where he has to take the job, or he has to at least be offered or in consideration for the job. So yeah, I think the reserve block, the press, I think Manchester United will always be good when they're blocking space. Even in the Everton game, apart from the corners, when Everton come out in the second half, we still look really good in terms of defending space and blocking out space. And I think that suits Manchester United more because it can play more direct when the ball's turned over, like we've seen in all the games that Man United have played against a bigger opposition. We can see that they're looking to play in behind, fast, off the ball runs from Sesko, Mbeumo, Cunha. That gets the most out of them. The press in some of the bigger games, in some of the lesser games, at home, like the Palace game and the Fulham game, that will need to be worked on. I think a lot of the times it is down to these two in midfield, the gaps that are being found, because I think Casemiro and Mainu, as we said before, aren't players who you would consider elite ball winners. They are not mobile enough, but Casemiro, when you're sitting off and you're defending space, similar to Mainu, they can hold their own within there. And I think Carrick has almost adapted to that pair in midfield. And then I think some of the issues that we've seen in terms of the balance on the left-hand side, again, comes down to that squad-building nature. If we're going into the next season playing a 4-back or playing a 4-2-3-1, most likely we're going to look for that natural left-sided winger. And even if we don't get a natural left-sided winger, I think Dorgu crossing over Cunha is going to work because they suit each other quite well. You've got the pace and power of Dorgu, and you've got that ability to roam inside and look for spaces for Cunha. And I think, it's really interesting, and I think it almost sounds stupid saying he can't do no wrong, but when I critique something at half-time in a game in my head, or I tweet it out, when I critique something that Carrick's done, whether it's Cunha's positioning, whether it's the build-up's been sloppy, there does seem to be some sort of tweak. I don't know how he does it every time. There does seem to be some sort of tweak. If you go and watch the penalty that was won on Lacroix, Matheus Cunha got that from standing on the touchline and then coming inside. And a lot of the chances that Bruno Fernandes was creating were coming with him and Cunha rotating on this flank, one staying inside, one going outside. And that was perfect because it got Bruno Fernandes and Cunha both the chance to play 1v1 against Munoz, the in-swinging ball. But then when Cunha was there, he has the ability to take it down the line. And I think he's just showing really good adaptability from game to game, from situation to situation with player. And I think if we do get Champions League, obviously we're now tied with Villa, ahead of them by goal difference on the table. We're third. I think we were something like 11 points behind Villa when Carrick come in. So it's absolutely mental what's going on. And just before we wrap up, so I do want to stress this enough because we've had quite a few debates in the office about this player. Bruno Fernandes this season in the Premier League has got the most assists, he's got the most chances created, he's got the most big chances created. And I think he's head of the chance created chart by about 24 chances. I think it's 74 to 50. I think he's becoming absolutely unbelievable. Like week in, week out, I think he's amazing. What he's doing, I think the connection he's now got with Sesko with them in-swinging balls. When Bruno Fernandes is behind the number 9, he plays better than most midfielders I've ever seen in the Premier League because he is that good at creating chances, at linking play in there. In past seasons, he's been more of a goal scorer. This season, he feels like a creative monster. If you give him the ball outside your box with space and time to cross it into a player like Sesko, it's pretty much over. The inevitability is there. And I think he might frustrate some fans, but he does stuff that a lot of teams would kill for in the Premier League, because I look at teams like Arsenal who are just missing that worldy chance creator, someone who can take a risk and just pluck something out of nothing. And Manchester United have got one of them rabbit out of a hat pullers. Like, he's that good. And I just think from game to game now, even if he has an off game the game before, which he has for Manchester United, he just follows that up with an absolutely world-class showing. So yeah, another 2 goals and assists for Bruno in this game, and just absolutely fantastic. And I do think now we are reaching the stage of the season. I think this we've obviously got St James's Park next, which is why I wanted to do this video now, where the questions are somewhat brewing for Michael Carrick. We've seen the good and we've seen the bad, and now I think it's going to get a little bit touchy towards the end of the season what Manchester United do long term. But we are going to get a longer video done on the Manchester United manager candidates, who should get the job, who we think might get the job alongside Michael Carrick. But we wanted to run through Carrick's games in totality, the 7 that he's managed so far at Manchester United in the second stint, to just talk about the good stuff, the bad stuff, the squad building stuff that needs to be addressed, what the weaknesses are, how to address these weaknesses in the summer and so on. But I'm absolutely buzzing, and I really couldn't be happier with what Michael Carrick's doing, because I think some of the weaknesses are just really plain and simple and obvious, and he's recognising them. So yeah, if you did enjoy, please don't forget to like and obviously subscribe to the Overlap Breakdown channel as we're chasing 50,000 subscribers. And let us know what you've made of Carrick so far at Manchester United, and whether or not he's on your shortlist to become the next Manchester United manager. And we'll see you next time on The Breakdown. Thank you.